Hi there, Mr. Mayo here. In today's video, we're going to continue to talk about recording for performance, auditions, and competitions. This particular video is part 2 of 2. You can find part 1 in the description below. In this video, we're going to be discussing more factors with self-recording and how intensive recording can actually get. Before recording, we want to make sure we take the time to set ourselves up for success. Where are we going to be recording? Recordings can sound completely different depending on the environment that we record in. The room's size, shape, and materials in the room often play a factor on the reverberation of sound at which frequencies can be heard best in the room. We want to find a room where we have a nice balance of reverberation. If the room is too dry, it will take the resonance and tone and make it sound very thin in the room. If the room has too much reverb, our recordings will sound very much muddled and really lack clarity. It's best to find a room where you have a decent reverb where the clarity can still be heard from a distance. If you have technology and it's possible to edit your recordings, you could actually edit to where you put reverb in post-production, but many competitions won't allow this type of editing. This would be more for people who are recording for performance or creating an album. So what they might actually do is want to record in an extremely dry environment just to get really good recordings, and then go in post-production and put the reverb in to make it sound like they're in maybe a concert hall or a better space than what they actually have availability to. Next up, you want to think about, are there any excess noises? Can you hear the air conditioner, the heater, washing machines, dryers, dishwashers, traffic, refrigerators, ice makers, pets, people, other people practicing? The list can really go on. Any sound where we can hear will likely be amplified through the recorder or microphone. We have to look at minimizing these noises. If we can't, it may be best to try to find a better place to record. I've heard stories about the MGM scoring stage at Sony Pictures in relation to traffic. The stage is in Los Angeles and traffic tends to go past the building where it's at. And some engineers have mentioned in the past that through the editing process, they can hear traffic noises, horns honking, and emergency vehicle sounds. And sometimes they can edit that stuff out, sometimes they can't. Any noise made will affect the recording. Some fantastic engineers can edit those types of sounds out, but most of the time, the sound's going to be in there even if you have some of the best engineers out there. So choose wisely where we record at. If we're videoing, be mindful of your surroundings. We want to look professional and our background to look professional. Dress appropriately and make sure your area is clean. If a camera backdrop is available, it can often make your videos look more professional in quality. Before we actually begin practicing recording for performance auditions and competitions, we want to get some practice recording runs in. We want to set up our equipment if we have it available in the room that we might be recording in, if we also have that available, and do full run-throughs of our pieces. Then we want to take the time to listen to it. I would recommend listening with headphones as we're more likely to hear details that would come through that we might not necessarily hear on speakers. Is the audio clear? Is there any excess noise? Is there too little or too much reverb in the room? Is it too loud where the mic is clipping? Is it too soft where we really can't hear the finer details? If it's too soft, the audio recorder may need to be closer, the gain on the microphone may need to be turned up, or the audio will need to be boosted in post-production. Gain actually controls the amplitude of a microphone signal. If it's turned up, it's going to sound louder, and if it's turned down, it's going to sound softer. If the mic is clipping, the recorder needs to be moved further away, if possible, the gain might need to be turned down. We want to make sure we give ourselves plenty of time to record. Do not expect to be a one-take and done person. We want to try multiple times until we get a performance that's our absolute best. This can take several hours to achieve, especially for recording for an audition or competition where recordings can't be edited. This is why it's so important to be prepared to give our very best. We need to allow ourselves a lot of time to record and even several days to record. Remember that we have unlimited takes, but once we put it out there, it's out there. If we've hired someone to help us with recording, this can be a factor that might push us to accept less than our very best. A lot of this might be the anxiety of having someone else listening to you or being afraid that you're wasting their time. Keep in mind that you have hired them, that they technically work for you, so you want to take your time to get the best recording that you can get. If they don't understand that, then they might not be the best person to record you. Make sure we're prepared though, so that way we don't waste our time or other people's time. Otherwise, be prepared to pay more for multiple sessions, and there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of people do it. If we're doing a recording that can be edited, it is possible to hire or find someone who could edit well. Alternatively, we can work on developing these skills ourselves. Usually this kind of recording involves multiple takes of a piece, breaking it down into sections to record and focusing on the most challenging spots. Sometimes this involves repetition of smaller chunks that can be edited later, or even measures. The key is having good editing points because there's only so much you can do. A lot of this factor depends on the piece and how it's broken down, as it can be hard to edit in single small details. There's not a lot of engineers that can do that, and even some of the best, depending on where the spot is in the piece of music, it's just not achievable. So keep that in mind as we go through, that you just want to have really good repetitions of your chunks. Sometimes multiple days are taken to record, so that way the recordings can be reviewed to see what needs to be re-recorded. If we record video for editing, it's also recommended to have multiple cameras set up with multiple angles to use, so that way it can go through the edits and just shift around to where it looks more fluid. Keep in mind that we can't sit back when we're recording and give less than our very best. We have to 100% go for it. Don't be shy. This will help us get the best tone and perform to the best of our ability. When we believe we've concluded recording, make sure we listen to it. Is it our best? Is it how we want to sound? Are there noticeable mistakes that we need to work on and that can be avoided? Is there clarity? In other words, how is our tone, articulation, dynamic contrast, intonation, emphasis, releases, and other musical elements? How's our diction if we're singing or saying something? Are the microphone levels peaking or too soft? Did we pay attention to the detail of the music? Is the environment too dry or does it have too much echo? We need to make sure we have captured our very best. Remember that we have unlimited takes. Use them. There's no excuse for less than our very best. So when it comes to recording, how deep can the rabbit hole go? The highest level of instrumental and choir recordings out there tend to be professional albums by orchestras, wind ensembles, choirs, chamber ensembles, and soloists. These albums often involve professional recording studios, series of different microphones ranging from just a few to hundreds of microphones, engineers who make a living on recording and mixing, extremely expensive and high quality equipment and software, and lots of editing. The most heard variation of this tends to be movie soundtracks. One day at one of the top recording studios out there can cost over $100,000 due to the rental of the space, the equipment that's used, the hiring of the engineers, the hiring of the musicians, and all the different people involved in this activity. Nothing but perfection is accepted. For most low-budget films and professional albums by orchestras, wind ensembles, choirs, chamber ensembles, and soloists, usually only one day of recording is done because they can't afford much else. For larger budget films, they often can afford to take several days to record an album for a soundtrack, and they seek out perfection. Sometimes reorchestrate parts for different voicings and listen to the recordings from previous sessions to determine what needs to be re-recorded. For instance, for Star Wars The Force Awakens, the recording took place during 12 sessions over 5 months. These kinds of sessions often involve some of the best composers, engineers, conductors, recording spaces, microphones, equipment, and musicians available. So that's it for recording for performance, auditions, and competitions. If you have any questions, feel free to send me an email at mayo@jeffreymayo.com. Also, feel free to subscribe for future videos, do work, and go practice.